Welcome to the show. I'm Jordan Harbinger. Now, several years ago, I met an FBI hostage negotiator who had revolutionized the way the FBI deals with terrorists, bank robbers, and other hostage takers who would gladly hold a gun to your head to get what they wanted. Now, my good friend Chris Voss is one of the leading experts on negotiation anywhere. Today, we'll learn the subtle art of letting someone else have our way using psychological leverage, archetypes of different negotiators and personalities, as well as something called the Black Swan rule, treating others not the way we want to be treated, but the way they want to be treated. Now, there's a reason that Chris has changed the way we negotiate with both terrorists and teenagers at home or the home office. And if you liked our previous three-part series on negotiation with Alex Coots, then you'll really love what Chris and I have for you on this episode of the show. Remember, there are worksheets for every episode. This one is no exception. Those are at jordanharbinger.com in the show notes. And also check out 6 Minute Networking if you want to learn how I book all these amazing people for the show. That's over at jordanharbinger.com/course. We teach you my networking tips and tricks, systems to keep it all engaged. All right, here's Chris Voss. I read the whole book, of course, again, which is great because you still learn. There's so much in the book. It reads like a more interesting instruction manual or textbook with actual stories, which most textbooks don't have because there's never any practical application to things you read in a lot of textbooks. But I noticed that even after, how long have you been doing the FBI thing? Or how long were you doing that, 20 years?
24 years.
24 years. You said you still feel fear during the negotiations. What do you mean by that? Why are you still feeling fear after
Well,
2
you know,
decades?
I mean, fear is an element that nobody ever gets away from. You're wired into it. It really just matters what you're scared of. It's not that you're not scared, it's what you're scared of. You know, I'm scared of not doing a good job. I'm scared I missed something. It took me a long time to realize I'm actually scared of being afraid.
Scared of being scared?
Yeah, you know, like if fighting words for me are coward. Because the last thing I want to be is a coward. Or conversely, you know, one of the worst names I ever call anybody is a coward. Like if I say you're a coward, I probably despise you.
Okay. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Iowa. I'm Iowa.
Iowa?
Boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Because that sounds like it's like a Texas thing. It sounds cowboyish. Like, oh, he called me yella. I'll show him. Yeah.
Marty McFly.
Yeah.
Nobody calls me yella.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Because
Yeah.
if somebody called me a coward, I'm like, I don't know. How personally would I take that?
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Different.
Yeah.
We resonate with different words. No,
Sure.
I don't think it's an Iowa thing. I think people are guilty of that everywhere.
Sure.
You know, it's a little bit. You know, were you born? I mean, we believe, you know, in my company that you're born one of 3 types: fight, flight, or make friends. Mm-hmm. It's a descendants from the caveman days, and people have put it in other ways. You know, caveman saw something. You know, do I eat it? Does it eat me? Can I mate with it? It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
I happen to be from the fight tribe, so.
Okay.
But the world splits pretty evenly into thirds. I mean, you get into a real problem, the problem of projection bias. I am normal, if you will. The
So
assumption that you're
thinking that
normal.
other people think like us.
Yeah.
So if we're fight, we think everybody's fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
That, you know, you think everybody's like that. I can remember first time I got introduced to the concept. I was when I first went up to Harvard Law School's negotiation course in their executive class, and they gave us this TKI, Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. Breaks you into 5 types, knock 2 out, you're left with one of the 3. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, every one of my hostage negotiators damn well better be assertive because we got people's lives on the line. Projection, you know, that's how I am. That's what it takes to do the job. As it turns out, that's only one. Each type has stuff they bring to the table that are necessary. No one type has the market cornered. And as I looked over my hostage negotiators, I had those that were primary analysts, and I had those that were primarily relationship-oriented people, and I was primarily assertion. And what you really need is all 3. So that just happens to be the tribe I started out in, and you got to learn the rest.
So we have personality archetypes that affect our negotiation. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you measure that from a test, or you just kind of say this person is this one, this person is that one, based on their.
You know, you can get a pretty good feel early on. Problem when you have miscommunications and mismatches in communications or barriers. You know, impasse is almost always a type problem, a type mismatch problem. Misunderstanding of a conversation. Classic example. The accommodative, relationship-oriented type. The worst thing they can do to you is stop working on a relationship, because that's the thing they value most. If we're talking, it's awesome. If I shut up, it means I hate you or I'm furious. The meanest thing a relationship-oriented person can do is give you the silent treatment.
Oh, interesting.
You know, and that's how they signal fury. Now, the analytical type, on the other hand, loves silence because they love to think. So you get an analyst and a commentator talking to each other. The analyst goes silent because they're grateful for the opportunity to think. The accommodator relationship-oriented type is like, oh my God, they're upset, I better talk.
Oh, right. So then the analyst can't think because the accommodator keeps talking.
Right. The analyst is just like,
Yeah.
I wish you'd shut up. And the accommodator's going, I got to talk.
And if the other person is assertive, or relationship-oriented, I should say, and then the analyst is thinking, the relationship-oriented person's going, uh-oh, they're mad at me, they're angry.
Right.
So we have it's kind of like what's that book, The 5 Love Languages or something like that? Have
Something
you ever
like
heard of
that.
this?
I've heard of it,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's for relationships, of course, but it sounds like these personality archetypes exist in negotiation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so in the beginning of any negotiation, do you try to ascertain which type of communication style the other party has? Is that important?
Well, you want to pull the information as you go. In reality, you should be working on having a great relationship all the time. So, we like to start with, of the 9 negotiation skills, there's 2 that everybody likes. And so you start out with that till you know the other type, which is basically, really listening, really dialing in, because everybody wants to be listened to. Mm-hmm. And then if you run into problems, your first question is, I'm probably misinterpreting what they say. Problems on my end. It's sort of like the real problem with cross-cultural negotiations. Everybody wants to learn cross-cultural negotiations.
Oh, yeah.
Because I still want to be me, but I want to know the tiny little things I got to do to make you happy so I can still be me. Like an American, all right, so don't show the bottom of my feet to somebody from the Middle East, and don't shake with my left hand, and then I could do everything else wrong.
Sure, yeah.
We're looking for shortcuts as opposed to really adapting to the other side.
Right, so we look for these kind of, I don't even know what you would call them, sound bites.
Yeah.
Like, oh, don't cross your foot and point it at the Saudi prince because that'll make him mad. And then meanwhile, you just ignore all of the other more nuanced things. The things that would actually require work to learn and practice.
Right.
Yeah, better to just open up a fortune cookie and learn something really quick about negotiation. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And I know that you use this in parenting, which makes sense. You got to negotiate with kids. But what about people day to day? I mean, are you looking at personality archetypes in communication or negotiation styles with everybody that you meet kind of automatically?
There's a difference between, are you looking for it, are you focusing on it, or are you just trying to remain aware of it?
Right.
And it's a little bit more just remaining aware of it. And make some predictions about how people are going to react to different sorts of gestures. An assertive type. I'm a natural born assertive. We're not good at reciprocity because we think we're so logical that if you gave us something, it was only logical that you should have given it to me. Therefore, I don't owe you anything.
Right, so it's a little sense of entitlement, maybe?
Yeah. You could call it like that. If I got it, I should have got it. Mm-hmm. The relationship-oriented person, we want to trade stuff back and forth all the time. So if I give you something, I'm really happy. I'm like a puppy dog with a ball. Throw the ball again. Let's do it again. And we get really flummoxed when the assertive just seems to be completely oblivious that you got to throw the ball back. Mm-hmm. And the assertive is thinking like, what's your problem? I don't know what's the matter with you. So tiny little things like that, again, it's when there's an impasse. Communication is broken down, it's probably going to be a type mismatch.
I wonder if it's been a little annoying since you've written the book, dealing with family and friends, where they look at every action that you do, and they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. You're doing this thing. You're doing the reciprocity thing. I'm not playing that game.
The hardest part is with my girlfriend. Because she's heard me give 1,000 interviews talking about this stuff. So she's heard me talk about it. Her guard gets up a little bit. And I'm like, I can, what is that line from the movie The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey? The character he's playing. I can listen to you and actively listen at the same time.
Yeah,
it gets in the way. People do get a little defensive. The closer they are to you, the more defensive they might get.
Oh man, how do you shut that down? Because I would imagine there's people, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's also really aware of negotiation skills, or say you're dealing with a terrorist in the Philippines, which you talk about in the book. If they're reading into your actions, that could kind of blow up in your face, because even if you're not trying to do some sort of trick to them, they might perceive it that way, and you have to manage that.
Yeah, well, all right, so first of all, it kind of starts with where's the other side coming from? Like if my son and I use negotiation techniques all the time. He's my chief operating officer. He's a chief negotiator for a company, but we want to collaborate. Mm-hmm. So of course we should be able to use negotiation techniques with each other. We'll both come from a great place. Or potential clients. You know, if a client wants to cheat us, they're not come from a good place. We're probably not going to make a deal with them. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to cheat our clients. You know, so they don't need to have their guard up around us. We're going to over-deliver. So it's really on where you're coming from. Now then, if you're talking about a terrorist, most of them that negotiate are the classic assertive negotiator, and they got one or two moves, period. They're used to intimidating people, and that's it. They're demanding, name-calling, assertive. The craziest thing is that I didn't realize when the book was written, but we realized since we come out, the procurement negotiator in business is almost the exact same type as the kidnapping negotiator internationally.
Wait, so somebody in Abu Sayyaf is the same as the procurement
Pretty
guy?
Much.
One just has a fancier rifle and maybe a hostage.
Right.
And the other one is a terrorist.
Procurement people, they in business, boy, they intimidate, they call names, they do everything they can to pound the heck out of the other side.
Huh. I am imagining we're going to get some emails from procurement people that are like, it's not true, I'm not like that. He's just dealt with bad ones.
No. Here's the funny thing. We do a lot of open enrollment training. 50 people in a room. There's always one or two procurement people there. And, you know, I'll say, anybody here from procurement? And they'll raise their hands.
Yeah. Get out.
Well, I'll let them stay, but I'll say, tell me I'm wrong about you guys. Tell me I'm wrong.
Really?
And they'll be like, no, you're not. I mean, I was a lot of procurement people in supply chain. I was at a supply chain conference one time. One of the guys was talking to me off to the side, and he said, when you're in procurement, you got to be really careful that you're not a supplier's either biggest customer or only customer, because you'll end up putting them out of business.
Right.
And I remember thinking to myself,
if you're doing it wrong.
Did you hear what you just said? They know they're so tough.
Yeah. It's not win-win at all at that point. If you're going to put them out of business.
They're there to content. Now the big advantage is too, and salespeople are horrified of procurement. I mean, they find out procurement's on the other side, and they just start to have nervous breakdowns. The only time procurement's going to be involved is when they really want you.
Can you explain what procurement is, so in case people don't know?
Procurement are the buyers. Mm-hmm. The contracts negotiators, Raytheon calls them contracts negotiators. Some companies call them, they're either in contracting or they're in procurement. Those will be their titles. But their job is to buy on behalf of the organization.
Okay.
Now what happens is the organization will identify a supplier they want, and then procurement becomes involved. Procurement does not waste their time on suppliers they have no interest in, ever. So if procurement gets in a game with you, buckle up, let them call you names, don't get upset, calm down. They're only talking to you because they really want you.
And if we realize that up front, then you wouldn't be chasing them down the
Don't get scared. You know, I had a director of sales call me, says, I want you to teach my people how to not cut the price when someone from procurement calls us with 48 hours left in a quarter. And I remember thinking to myself, if you even have to ask me that question, your structural problems are far out of my ability to change. But the reality is, all they got to do is say no. Because a procurement guy who calls with 48 hours left in a quarter feels that's the only time the entire quarter he had leverage. 48 hours, his leverage is gone.
Right. So wait 48 hours.
Wait 48 hours.
Leverage. Yeah.
Well, wait 72 hours. Mm-hmm. You got him.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know that they have any leverage. That's also in never split the difference is that you always have leverage. And I thought, well, wait a minute. What about in a kidnap situation? They got your aunt. You don't have any leverage, but even then you have leverage.
And it's a classic example that we love to ask people. The person with all the leverage, I got your aunt, you're the one's got the leverage. Cash is king, right? Who's got the cash?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do.
You probably don't actually want my family member screaming and whining in your basement.
I'm going to give them back, huh?
Yeah, you want to get rid of that person and trade him for a briefcase full of money at that point, at some point.
Yeah. No, but it's a buyer's market. Kidnapping in reality is a buyer's market, but that gets back to leverages in the eye of the beholder.
That's true, I suppose, because unless you're talking about you're an American and you're being held by a group overseas, your aunt is only really valuable to you. They can't turn around and go, oh, well, we got a better offer for your aunt from this other person.
Down the street, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like you're the only buyer for that particular product.
Exactly.
You might really want that product. You might really want your aunt back, but nobody else can outbid you. There's nobody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. I thought for sure the exception to you always have leverage was when you were talking about a kidnapping.
Yeah.
But actually, even there.
Yeah, you got a lot of leverage. It's sort of amazing.
Huh. Well, and your stuff has to work, because if your negotiation techniques don't work in the FBI for hostage situations, someone dies, theoretically.
Yeah, and let me draw a fine line, because I had to learn that early on too, and I learned it from my old boss, Gary Nessner. But he'd always told us, and it took me a while to figure out what it meant, we got the best chance of success. We never guaranteed anybody success. We just guaranteed them the best chances. So by you said it's always got to work. Best chance of success, if it works 99 times out of 100, you're in 100 kidnappings, you're going to lose one person.
Oh, man. So you always have to be kind of ready for that emotionally? You
should be. I don't know that you're ever actually ready till it happens. But then depending upon how you prepared yourself, accepted, and told yourself, at least intellectually, that it was a possibility, then you get through it. And what I ended up doing was I actually pointedly recruited the veteran kidnap negotiators were the people that have been in situations that somebody got killed, who were the best. Because the other thing at that point in time too is one of two things happen if you're a kidnapping negotiator and somebody gets killed. You say, you know what, I could do something else. Let me,
like a different job.
Yeah, let me go do something else within the FBI. I don't got an appetite for this. I want to, whatever it is. Maybe I want to do witness support. I don't know what, but they're going to decide, this ain't that much fun. Or they're going to say, I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to double down. I'm going to get smarter. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to go back. I'm going to think about every single thing I did. And if there's one, even the tiniest thing I would change or get better at, I'm going to go back and get better at it. And those people would become the best negotiators, because we're always going to propose solutions that scare people.
What do you mean by that?
I might say, stop talking to the bad guys now.
Yeah, that would freak me out. I'd be like, I want to keep talking with them because I feel like as long as I keep talking with them, my wife's going to be okay.
Exactly.
Sure.
But we may know from the profile of the situation that at this point in time, if we stop talking, the other side's going to get worried, and in order to regain control, instead of doing something negative, they're going to do something positive. Because then they can regain control in a completely different mindset. Okay. So let's trick them into doing something positive, because they're going to try to regain control. And there'll be real specific instances where that'll be crystal clear that that's what they're going to do.
Oh, man, to be sitting next to, you must have a lot of people standing next to you, especially during these kidnap situations, where they're like, you better be damn sure about this. Because you're sitting there like, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to leave them alone for 24 to 48 hours, and then they're probably going to put your mom on the phone. And then that person's like, what are you talking about? You better be right about this.
Right.
How do you gain that person's trust? Or do they just have to trust you?
You got to know that moment's coming.
Okay.
If you know it's coming, you prepare in advance.
So you tell them in advance, hey, look, we might have to ghost them for a couple days. Just be ready for that.
Well, I'm going to say, there's a really good chance we're going to do something here that's going to scare the hell out of you. I don't know exactly how all this is going. I got a team with me. This is not just me saying this. I got a team. I'm a representative of our entire body of institutional knowledge. This is not my decision. Everything I do, I bounce off a lot of people, but I'm going to tell you in advance, we're going to ask you to do stuff that scares the heck out of you. And actually, I'll say to them, I'm going to tell you in advance, I want you to be scared. It's going to help us in the negotiation.
How's that?
Well, what actually happens when you do that, first of all, the bad guys, if they satisfied you're scared, they think they got the upper hand and they relax.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fear is their control mechanism, so their overriding desire is for you to be scared.
Yeah, mission accomplished if you've got some kidnapped relative. Most people are going to be scared.
Now they think they're going to get what they want, and they relax. They're less worried about deadlines. They don't make so many threats. They chill out. But the other really crazy thing about the way the brain works is if you have a negative emotion in you, say fear, and instead of me trying to say eliminate fear, I say I like it, it'll make it go away.
Right, it dissipates, takes the edge off probably.
Takes the edge off tremendously, because you'll be like, what, you want me to be scared?
Because I'm not trying to suppress it at that point.
As soon as you stop trying to suppress it, it's one of the keys to making it go away.
Ah, okay. So this ties in a little bit with what you wrote about with cognitive, I think, with cognitive bias and knowing that we all suffer from this cognitive bias. We can't just have these robotic negotiations. And part of that is there's an emotional component to negotiation. A lot of people think, oh, if I do this, they're going to do this. If they do this, then we're going to do that. And that's sort of like a rational computer program negotiation.
Right.
And that doesn't work because we have to take into consideration this emotional component of negotiation. How do you prepare for that? Are you looking at kind of a roadmap in your head of, all right, the logical response would be this, but I think that we've got this emotional component where they're freaking out because the military is looking for them in the jungle. So there's a little bit of fear or there's a little bit of urgency that they're feeling that wouldn't dictate this type of response. How do you even know? Are you able to predict what the other side is going to do most of the time? Or are you looking at maybe two outcomes, the logical outcome and the emotional outcome, and it's going to be one or the other?
Well, there's no such thing as logic, first of all.
At all?
At all, period.
Okay.
It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's logical to you and what's logical to me, we're going to make up based on what we care about. Mm-hmm. Which then sort of takes the definition of logic out if it's based on what you care about. So we start that there's emotional tension. We'll try to think about 2 to 3 moves ahead, no more than that. And we'll think we'll think on a couple, 2 or 3 different sets of outcomes. Now we're never going to hit one exactly, but actually if we think on both extremes and we're prepared for extremes, it's going to land someplace in the middle and we're going to be prepared for it no matter what. The reason why you don't think more than 3 moves ahead is, and it's kind of hard to envision this, but everybody wants to think in terms of chess, you know, negotiations chess.
Right.
Well, just connect all the pieces with springs under tension. Because when you make a move in chess, all the other pieces stay in exactly the same place. But if they were all connected by springs, every time you moved one, they'd all move a little bit. And by the time you'd made 2 or 3 moves, almost all the chess pieces would have reset, which meant all of your analysis is now gone because the entire board got reset. And that's what happens with emotion. So you think, all right, I know roughly where I want to end up. There's about 5 different ways to get there. Let's see which one we go off on first.
So you're not looking at like, okay, we do this and then that's probably going to happen, then we're going to do that and then that's probably going to happen. Do you have to take each move individually based on where you are right in that moment? Because if the chess pieces are all moving every time you do something, then you're dealing with a whole new scenario after each move. Does that make sense?
Pretty much. After each third move, like you got a pretty good idea what the next move is going to be. But you go very much farther than that, and I'll give you an example. Chase Manhattan Bank, we talk about it in the book.
Yeah, the bank robbery.
Bank robbery. I'm a second negotiator on the phone. Hugh McGowan is the commander of the NYPD team. He puts me on the phone. He takes this guy off. He says, you're up, you're next. This is what I want you to do. Bad guy had been hiding his name from us the whole time. We were pretty sure we knew who he was by the time I'm getting ready to get on the phone. We'd also been talking to him about letting hostages go.
Is it Chris Watts?
A guy named Chris Voss.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, great first name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Depends on your emotional perspective.
Yeah, but all right, so we're asking about hostages. We got no reason to believe he'd hurt the hostages, which was bad analysis. He'd beaten all of them at that point. And we didn't know that.
That's a bad sign, I would assume.
Generally, it's a bad sign. So Hugh says, we're going to switch up negotiators. We're not, an ordinary handoff with Jordan would be like, Chris is going to come on the phone. Chris has been listening the whole time. Let me introduce Chris.
And you have been listening the whole time?
I have.
Okay.
That's the normal handoff. And I would say, hi, I'm Chris. I've been sitting here with Jordan the whole time. And as a matter of fact, I've been listening to everything, and here's everything I heard.
Why would you switch negotiators? Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm curious. Why go, hey, Jordan was negotiating with you before, he's gone now it's me. What's the point of that?
It could be you're doing a bad job.
Yeah, that's probably why.
It also could be you and the hostage taker have got such a great relationship going that the minute he comes out, the relationship's over, and that's why he won't come out.
Oh, interesting. So there's this, he wants to keep that going for some reason, sort of psychological attachment to the negotiator?
Yeah, I was on another barricade, and I'm listening, and the hostage, the guy who's barricaded, and the negotiator are having such a great conversation. I turned to commander and I said, he ain't coming out as long as he gets to talk to Jordan.
We're going to be
he
here
loves
till Christmas.
Jordan.
Yeah.
He's having a great time.
Jordan's his only friend, yeah.
George's his only friend.
Oh, man.
So it could be a variety of reasons. You got to call it in a moment. But anyway, Hugh puts me on the phone and he says, we're not going to do the ordinary handoff. You're just going to take over the phone and say, you're talking to me now. And we're going to do it really abruptly. All right? And then when you get a chance, you can do a couple of other things. So we do a complete abrupt shift. And our bad guy is kind of like, oh, you want to play games with me, huh? Now, of course, this is not what he says, but he talks to me for a few moments, puts me on hold. He goes and gets a hostage with no warning, and all of a sudden I hear a woman's voice on the other end of the phone say, I'm okay. And I'm sorry, who is this? Who is this? She says, I am okay. And then the phone goes dead, she goes away. Now, not in a million years would we have predicted that going forward. But he's like, you want to play games? I'll play games too. He goes and gets a hostage, he puts her on the phone, doesn't say anything threatening. He never gets on the phone and says, now I want you to remind you I got hostages. It's all implied. Because he also knows the bank is surrounded with the 7th largest standing army in the world, NYPD. 7th largest standing army in the world. They got 50 caliber machine guns, they got SWAT guys, they got bombs. He doesn't want to get killed. He's smart enough to imply a threat without stating a threat, because he knows if he says, you got an hour if you want to keep the hostage alive,
SWAT's going to go in and...
somebody's going to put a little red dot on his forehead and he's going to be gone. But we never could have predicted that move. And if we'd have had a whole game plan mapped out that we were sure was going to work, that would have all been wasted time as soon as he put the hostage on the phone, because it blew the plan up to that point.
Reset the chessboard, yeah.
Reset the chessboard.
What was the point of the abrupt shift in negotiators without doing a handoff? Why do that?
We were trying to show him in a more, maybe not entirely subtle way, that we were in charge. And you can do that. You can do, in any negotiation, you could risk something the other side might not like if you've been stalemated for a really long time. And we'd been stalemated for 5 hours, and a stalemate by definition is a low threat level. So it's, risking a U-turn, and what happens after your U-turn, it becomes an S-curve, and you come around someplace else and you're in a better place.
Okay.
So we were risking a setback because we'd been stuck for so long.
You mentioned that when people feel listened to, they listen to themselves more and they clarify their demands and their desires. So how would that look in practice? Is that, because when I'm imagining this, I'm imagining somebody just kind of being fake nice to the hostage taker on the phone so that they feel heard or something. I guess I'm trying to imagine what this would look like in practice.
Well, in a bank or in a business negotiation?
Well, I guess the exciting version is the bank robbery,
Right.
but the practical situation is the business negotiation.
Yeah, well, I could say, look, you say you're not going to hurt a hostage, but you're not going to let anybody go. I mean, how do those things add up? I'm gonna. If I need you to hear what you're saying, I need to pick out a couple things that you say that don't add up, And then I say, how do those add up?
So you're forcing me as a hostage taker to reconcile what I've said and maybe think about what I'm doing?
That is exactly the point. And that it works in hostage negotiation, it works in business negotiation. And it's actually probably more important in business negotiations because most business people will stay stuck in a rut with a strategy that's taken them nowhere. And they'll say they have big goals. And so I can say to the head of sales, you want your salespeople to be more productive, but you're not going to give them any more training. How do those things add up?
It reminds me of the how am I supposed to do that technique.
It's a version of that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. You know, how is a great deferential word. You know, one definition of confrontation is a focused comparison. So I take your actions and I take your words and I use the word how to compare them. It's just a focused comparison.
So that in practice would be somebody asks you for something like, give me $1 million or I'm going to shoot your aunt. You say, well, how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to get you the money?
Yeah, that's just a straight how. It's deferential, but it shifts the entire problem back onto them, which at least wears them out.
So how much of negotiation, especially in a hostage situation, or actually business and that for hostage for that matter, is wearing the other party down to the point where they just want to, if it's a hostage situation, go home, take whatever the hell they can get and leave, or in business, they just want to go to the bathroom or get lunch and just not be in that damn conference room anymore?
Well, it's wearing the other side down if the other side is an aggressive throat-cutting negotiator. Or if they're from procurement.
Sure, from procurement, yeah.
You know, it depends upon who's on the other side. Mm-hmm. Or if your emotions are out of control. You know, your emotions are going to get tamped down as you get exhausted. If your emotions are out of control in a negative way. You know, it's important to draw a fine line. It's not emotions that are bad, it's negative emotions that are bad. Positive emotions actually help us perform better.
How do you harness that in practice? I would imagine it's got to be pretty tough knowing there's a bank full of people and you've got to harness positive emotion. I mean, what are you doing to get yourself in a positive state? Oh,
well, I mean, it depends upon on a bank. I mean, I'm going to remain optimistic over the outcome. Even with you. Like, you're a bank robber and I'm talking to you on the phone. Ideally, you've made an escape demand. Ideally.
Why is that ideal?
That shows that you want to live.
Oh, right. Right. If I make no escape demand, you're wondering if I'm just going to.
If you haven't made an escape demand, there's a really good chance that you're planning on dying today. Suicide by cop. Mm-hmm. So, absence of an escape demand is a really bad sign in a barricade bank robbery. If you got a guy barricaded in his house, he ain't got to make an escape demand because that's where he lives. But if it's a bank or something like that, and there's no escape demand, you got a real problem.
Do you try to lead them to an escape demand, or are you actually seeing if they'll do it because you want to get a read on their situation?
No, you got to read them.
Yeah.
You know, you really can't lead people because something in what they're saying is going to give you the out. So I just got to listen for it.
Okay. Right, because if you just say, how do you plan on getting out of there? They're just going to make something up, but it doesn't.
They're going to be like, I'm going to start throwing bodies out till you let me go.
Oh, man.
So I don't want to go there.
Yeah, you don't want to accelerate that timeline by any stretch. Yikes. Yeah. You've also, one thing that's fascinating to me is that smart people often don't make good negotiators. That was actually really disappointing for me because I thought,
because you're a really smart guy.
I'm going to be naturally good at this. I'm a well-studied guy. I went to law school. I'm going to be great at negotiation. And then I read the rationale for why, and I thought, crap, that is me. I would totally fall into these traps. Can you outline what some of that is? Because I think a lot of people think they're really good at negotiating because they're intelligent and they can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, you want to show how smart you are. And the problem with that is you might not intend it that way, but it makes me feel stupid.
As a hostage taker or as the opposite
or
party.
In business. I mean, the more you show you're smarter than me, the less I want to be around you because I like being around you. And that's not good news for our long-term relationship. So, you know, that's a real problem. The other problem is there's an efficiency problem that works completely opposite what we would think. If I want to tell you the answer, me telling you, it's very passive on your side. It's what we refer to as a didactic exchange. You're just sitting there listening passively. And there's some pretty solid data out there that if I want to get a point across to you in a didactic exchange where you're just listening, you're just passive, you're not engaged, I got to tell you 19 times.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's the least efficient way to get a point across is to tell somebody, because you got to tell them 19 times. Mm-hmm. Now, if I slow down, if I use questions to affect your thinking, if I shape your thinking so that you discover it.
Right, then it's my idea.
Two things.
Okay.
You discover it faster, and it's your idea. So I got two things going for me now. It took less time overall, and you embrace it much more because you feel like you thought of it.
This seems like a parenting. This would come in handy with parenting, right? Like,
well, maybe, how much of parenting is just human being to human being?
Yeah, I think all of it, right?
Yeah.
It's just that one human being might be a little bit more emotional or irrational. Are kids more irrational than adults? I don't even know.
Well, again, definition of rationality. You can count on kids to be more optimistic and adults to be more pessimistic. So who's better off?
Probably the kid.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There's, and that'll give us off onto almost a whole different journey on cognitive learning. Mm-hmm. But kids are more present in the moment. That's why they learn faster than adults do. Adults are always worried about outcomes, they're always considering what happened in the past, they're always worried about where it's going. Those two things, by definition, takes you out of the moment, which means you're not learning as much, you're not figuring out the moment as fast as you could be. Kids learn languages faster than adults do. Do they have this magical power? No, they're not distracted by the past or the future the way adults are, and they just are more focused in the moment.
And probably less worried about looking stupid as well.
Well, that's part of the worry of the future. How am I going to look if this doesn't work out? Interesting book out there called The Culture Code, Daniel Coyle.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Very first part of it, right? 4 groups: kindergartners, business school students, CEOs, and I think lawyers.
Interesting set of samples.
See, four teams, marshmallow challenge. You get macaroni, dry macaroni string, and a marshmallow. As a team, construct the highest tower. What team wins? The kindergartners.
Really? Huh.
Second place are the CEOs. Third place are the lawyers. Last place are the business school students.
That's funny. No surprise, lawyers coming in.
And coming in high, right?
Yeah.
But the kindergartners, because they don't care about looking stupid in front of each other, so they don't care about making mistakes.
So they try 400 different ways, and they finally find one.
And they have a ball, and they interact, and they support each other, and nobody gets bent out of shape, or nobody gets concerned or embarrassed, and they win every time.
And the business school students are still making spreadsheets until the clock almost runs out, and then they finally throw something together and it falls over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I actually took a harder look at that too, because I don't think it's business school students per se. I think it's the age range.
Oh.
And
that's interesting.
Typical age range, you're talking about your mid-20s to early 30s. And in sort of my view, my experience, that's when people are at some of their most individually competitive times.
Do you find that negotiating with people, hostage takers, for example, do you see differences in the age group? Like, hey, if someone's 19 and they take hostages, is it a different negotiation than if someone's 60 and they take hostages, or is that kind of irrelevant?
it would be completely different.
Really?
Yeah, because their views of the past and the future are going to be completely different, and which is going to affect your threat level.
How can you tell, aside from the age, what are you looking for their assessment of the past and the future?
They're going to start giving it to you right away. It's remarkably, that stuff in any circumstance is remarkably easy to hear if you're actually listening.
What are you listening for?
First you look for pronouns, then you'll look for levels of emotion, then there's going to be implications, indicators of the future in nearly everything that they say. Their optimism.
For the young person or the old person?
Either person.
Okay.
Either optimism or pessimism about where things are going, or what's in the moment, or you also look for specific types of losses. Personal or professional losses are the biggest ones. Big personal losses, big professional losses. And so you're looking at people's calculation over losses, and then how does that affect their vision of the future?
Okay. So when you see that somebody is maybe younger or optimistic about the future, does that bode better for the negotiation itself, or is it just a different set of tactics?
Yeah, well, if they're optimistic about the future, then you got somebody you can work with there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're in the midst of a coping situation, sometimes gone sideways for the moment. There's a pretty good chance they're just trying to sort of get their feet back under them emotionally, and especially if they're optimistic about the future, then they feel they're resilient over whatever comes at them short term. They'll get over it.
So you're pulling all these different levers depending on what people are giving you. Are you mostly reacting to the hostage taker, or are you following through on a specific set of plans, more or less, that just takes different detours based on what they're giving you?
You're trying to figure out how you can get out in front of them.
What does that mean?
Well, I need to start to assess, what's driving you now. What loss is there? What negative emotion is there? Hostage negotiation skills are just emotional intelligence tools. I can start to hear what negative emotions are driving you, and I know how to turn them down. I will listen for what those positives might be, and I know how to turn those up. And as soon as I start getting a readout of where you are, sort of on, there's a buffet of choices that I then have. And so now I can get proactive and start to get out in front of something. If you just need to feel back in control, you're barricaded, you're mad at your wife. Instead of saying, do you want to get out of this alive? Do you want to see your kids again? Do you want to live? Those are all yes-oriented questions. If you're really mad at your wife, I might say, do you want your wife to win? Answer that's no.
Right.
I know from my experience that when you say no, you feel in control. That's why people say no.
Yeah. So you might want to give them a no so that they regain control or feel like
it's
they have.
5 times as good as a yes would ever be.
So no's even better than yes.
At least 5 times better.
Really?
Yeah, across the board in all circumstances. All circumstances.
So you're trying to get them to say no, or get to a no, I should say.
Well, business deal. I lay a proposal out in front of you. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, would this work for you? I'll say, is it ridiculous to think this might work for you?
Yeah, of course I would say no, unless it's actually ridiculous somewhere.
Well,
else.
if there are problems with it, when you say no, it's not ridiculous, but here are the problems. If I say, would this work for you? You can't say yes, but here are the problems. It's really hard to do that. So you're scared to say yes because you think you've just agreed to the deal.
Right. Yeah.
So that's when you're going to go, maybe. And you're scared to answer it. You got nothing, and you're scared to answer it all. But since when you've already said no to something, whatever you say after that, you don't feel there's obligations that go along with it. I said, no, it doesn't work. Here are the problems. I never said I'd agree if I lay the problems out. If I lay the problems out and you fix them, I will agree. But since I never felt like I said that, in point of fact, if I fix all those problems, I now have a tailor-made solution to you that you felt in control of.
Right, so the no is almost like a highlighter. It's like you're seeing the invisible ink at that point.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah.
Because I'm telling you exactly what's wrong at that point, and then you can go, all right, mentally circling these 3 things,
right.
Change those, and then in theory, we have a deal.
Yeah.
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 Instead of just having you shoot something down or lose control by saying yes, which you're not going to do, especially if the stakes are really high.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, we got a lot of people that are focused on that. They lay a proposition out to somebody and they'll say, well, what's wrong with this? What are the obstacles here? There's got to be obstacles. Help us identify them.
So this is cooperative almost no matter what, because you're doing a deal, even whether the person's kidnapped a family member or they're robbing a bank or you're sitting across from them sharing a pot of tea at a business negotiation that's friendly, or you're parenting your kid. So these are all cooperative regardless of whether or not, it's all a business deal, seemingly.
Yeah.
I would imagine that cognitive bias comes into play, especially when emotions are really high. And you talk about this a little bit in the book. Is that why you have people? All right, let me back this up. You see these things in movies, right, where there's a hostage negotiation and there's like the police captain's on the phone and the commissioner's on the phone and the mayor's on the phone and the hostage negotiator's on the phone and then some psychologist is on the phone and there's 15 other people listening on headphones. 1, is that accurate? 2, what is the point of that? Are you is it sort of getting everybody's opinion? I mean, what's the point of all this
And all those people are on the phone with the bad guy? Or?
Yeah, I feel like I see that a lot.
You're only going to want to have one person on the phone. You're not going to want to swap out a lot of people.
Oh, I just mean listening to the call.
Oh, well, listening to the call. If people know how to listen as a team.
What does that mean?
Everybody got specific assignments, stuff you're listening for. Like, your only job may be to keep track of how long the conversation lasted.
Why is that? Why is that important?
Because the longer the conversation, it's an indicator we're making progress.
Because of it's sort of a trust barometer, or
yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But then I might have somebody else. You're only listening for the negative things that they say that sound negative or be construed as negative. You're only listening for the positive things they say. I mean, when somebody starts talking between the words that they say and even more importantly, the words they don't say or their tone of voice, there's more information there than one person can keep up on. Roughly, we can listen at a rate of about 400 words a minute. We speak at a rate of 140 to 160 words a minute. That's why we think we can listen to more than one conversation, just the words. But there's 5 times as much information in the tone of voice than there are in the words. So 140 times 5
where bandwidth's already
is
maxed
now
out.
you're already shot the bandwidth of one person to listen.
I see. So you've got people listening for vocal tonality, like you said, the positives and negatives, and that has to be a specific person. Because I'm sitting here while you're telling me that, and I'm like, I could do that all myself. But that's exactly what people who get people killed in hostage situations think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
don't
like
hire me for that.
Give me 7 people.
Yeah.
If you give me
7?
7 people to listen to everything, we'll all pick a different part. We'll all have very specific assignments, and we will come up with an encyclopedia of information, ideas, and clues in a 10-minute conversation.
So these 7 people, these people are all on your team when you're negotiating, doing the hostage negotiation thing. And then the call ends, and then everybody goes and sits down and says, all right, what did you hear? I mean, how do you construct this in the moment? Because I would imagine you can't say, all right, everybody, file a report about this. This has to happen pretty quick. I would imagine these hostage negotiations, time is always of the essence. So you got these 7 people that you pick for your team, and are they all hostage negotiators? Or are they all trained?
They've all got to be trained.
And do they always do the same thing? Like, is there always a guy? Am I always the voice tone guy? Am I always the positives guy?
No, it kind of depends. Everybody's capable of pretty much doing any job. Our best negotiator will not be on the phone. Our best negotiator will be running the team.
Really?
And then because of that, like almost any one of the team members can be on the phone because whoever's on the phone's got the support of 7 people. And we could almost take our least trained negotiator and put him on a phone.
So that's in a way that's almost like the least important, maybe not quite least important, least technically skilled part of it?
Probably. If you're as long as you're coachable. You're coachable, you're taking input from people on notes, and plus while you're talking, I mean, you're looking around and maybe somebody's written something on a board and they point to that, and then you say that. Like in Chase Manhattan bank robbery, again, in the book. You know, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to the guy, I'm working on him to really, my point is to get a hostage out, which is what the hostage negotiator is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And somebody hands me a note and says, ask him if he wants to come out. That was somebody that was listening. As it turned out, I didn't even know at the time who it was from. I found out like 3 years later. It was my friend, Jamie Cedeno. Jamie's sitting there and something in Jamie's instincts is telling him that this guy wants to come out more than anything else. He just hears it. His radar's picking it up. Our subconscious, where our radar is literally 20 million times faster than our conscious. And Jamie's subconscious, his instinct has picked it up. And he writes, ask him if he wants to come out. And I see a note pop in front of my face. I don't know where it came from, doesn't matter. So I go, do you want to come out? And there's a long silence on the other end of the line, and the guy says, I don't know how I do that. Which is a great big giant yes.
Yeah.
A great big giant, please figure out how to get me out of here.
Yeah, I want to come out, but I don't want to get shot.
I don't want to get shot.
Right.
I don't want to get beat up. And as it turned out, what he was really worried about, he was worried about his buddy shooting him when he went out the door. And then
Oh, his co-conspirators?
His co-conspirators
shooting him in the back or
shooting,
whatever?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or as soon as he got out the door, he thought the NYPD he was going to catch a beating. And he's like, I don't know how I do it. That's what we found out later on. That was what all that meant. So we continue to talk. And when he says, I don't know how I do that, like everybody goes like, holy cow, okay, get him out of there. Everybody focus on getting him out. I'm talking. Again, probably about, I don't know, maybe half an hour later, another note comes in my hand. I don't know where it's from. As it turns out, it's from Jamie again. And the note says, tell him you meet him outside. And I say to him, how about this? How about if I meet you out front of the bank? And he goes, yeah, I'm ready to end this shit.
So did you walk up to the bank door?
Not quite.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I would be like,
I
don't know about this.
strolling up like
Yeah.
I'm a customer.
Yeah.
Because normally, first of all, FBI doesn't do, as a general rule, we don't do face-to-face.
Really? At
Yeah,
all?
so we're scrambling. We decide I got to go out. I don't have a bulletproof vest. I don't have a ballistic helmet. You know, they're grabbing a vest from this guy and they're grabbing a helmet from this guy, and I'm trying to put this stuff on. And I'm scrambling to get outside. And the plan once I get outside is I'm going to stand behind one of the SWAT trucks. It's got a PA on it, and I'm going to talk to him from the PA. I'm not going to walk up.
How was that better than the phone?
Yeah, who cares, right?
I guess, yeah.
It felt better. You know, and we don't know what he's thinking. So it was funny. Ha ha, hostage story, funny, ha ha.
Yeah, the people inside are like, this story is not funny.
But
Yeah.
I get out there, I get on the PA, I start talking to him. At this point, I still don't know this guy's name. Crazily enough, that's the way it evolved. So I said, hi, it's Chris, I'm out here. So SWAT, standard operating procedure, is to barricade the exit from the outside so a bad guy suddenly doesn't run away. So SWAT has barricaded the bank from the outside, which everyone has forgotten. So I'm trying to talk this guy out to the door. We don't know how many bad guys are inside. We don't know how they're going to react. We don't know if they're going to start shooting. We don't know what the hell's going to happen. He comes to the door and he can't get out.
Oh, God. That would...
He rattles the door, and everyone's like, ah!
He's nervous, right? I mean, oh, crap, I'm trapped in here now?
Yeah, and on the outside, we're going, now what do we do? We forgot to unlock the door. And with no plan of how to unlock the door. So SWAT commander, SWAT guys, you know, those guys don't get rattled. You know, they scramble a couple guys, ballistic shield. These two guys get behind a ballistic shield. You know, they go up really slow. Again, we don't know how many bad guys are inside. And we don't know what the hell's going to happen. You know, are they going to see him? Is somebody going to jump him? Who knows? They just get up there real slow. They get the key. They unlock the door. Real slow, they back away. And Bobby comes out.
I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. I don't know if I'd want to leave. I would have to trust you so much to be like, yeah, I'm going to stroll out of here.
Of course you
Yeah,
trust
sure,
me.
sure.
Of course.
Why not? Well, I
Don't
guess I
you
have
trust
no
me
choice.
now? Come on out.
Yeah, sure. Come on out. I guess also I have no choice. I'm stuck in a bank with a bunch of other criminals that I'm thinking might shoot me too.
Well, decision. Some people, you make the decision. I mean, what holds you back from your decision? Your fears. The biggest fear that was holding him back was that he was gonna get seriously beaten when he came out, which did not happen. And the fear that drove him out was he had come to the realization that every additional minute he stayed inside, since he planned on coming out, every additional minute he stayed inside was going to cost him jail time. So the clock is ticking.
Did you tell that? You told him that was going to happen?
Don't need him to think that. Realize that he's come to that conclusion on his own. There's also, since you don't know for sure what's going to happen to the hostages, that's not resolved yet. He needs to get out of there before this goes bad on the inside. So all sorts of losses are driving him to go out the door. I don't want to be here when this goes bad. I want to minimize my jail exposure. The status quo, when the status quo costs you, that's when you leave the status quo. Whether you're in a bank, whether you're in a business deal. Most people don't make deals because they're comfortable with the status quo, even if they shouldn't. It's a boiling frog analogy. You know, you can turn the heat up on a frog and it'll stay. They'll get comfortable when they should leave. You have to be aware that the status quo is worse than the possibilities, and that's when people make decisions to change the status quo.
Do you highlight that for him? Like, hey, the longer this lasts, the worse it's going to be? That seems like something I would hear in a movie with hostages.
You highlight it, but not like that.
Right. That seems, you don't want him to panic, right?
Right.
You want him to
Or
come
you don't want to sound like you're threatening.
Right. Yeah, sure, that makes sense.
So you go back, you're going to ask a how question. I might say something like, look, man, how can I go to the judge on your behalf if you don't come out? That's saying the same thing. But it's using a how question, again, is really deferential. And so you confront people with how questions because it leaves them the option of the decision and they don't feel backed into a corner.
Is this how you mentioned before, slow things down? Is that what this is as well? Slowing things down by
Absolutely.
asking questions?
Yep.
And we're slowing things down because we want them to feel that sense of control and not like this is moving so fast that they don't have control.
Yeah, that's the first and biggest reason. The other thing too is, Danny Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah.
Slow thinking is in-depth thinking. You're using a how or what question to trigger in-depth thinking, which also is exhausting. So if it's my intention to gain the upper hand by exhausting you, that's what I'm going to do.
So you're creating more cognitive load for me to come up with the reasons.
Yeah, you must have gone to law school or something. Come
Yeah,
up with terms
yeah,
like
yeah.
cognitive load, right?
Well, I read Daniel Kahneman's book, right? Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. So you're really making my brain do work,
Right.
so that I'm eventually like just beat up, tired.
Yeah, you're tired, you're worn out, and you own it.
I own the decision, yeah.
Ownership is the issue.
Huh. Yeah, this is really interesting because it seems like it's a really slow game of you're grinding these guys down a little bit, but you can't make it seem like you can't beat them up. You have to let them just drain their energy reserves on their own.
Yeah, and principally, again, it's draining negative energy. Because you don't make good decisions in an angry state of mind. There's an old saying, if you give a speech when you're angry, it's the best speech you'll ever regret.
Yeah, I've heard that, I think. Probably from you. But are there tricks then for getting into positive emotional states when the stakes are high? I mean, you said optimism, but do you want them in a positive emotional state as well?
Well, it would sequencing in context, as a general rule, in a crisis hostage situation, you don't want them, you don't want them euphoric. You just don't want them negative. Business, the more positive frame of mind we're both in, the better deal we're going to make, and the more likely we are to want to do another deal. And that's probably the only flip side difference between business negotiation and hostage negotiation. Hostage negotiators, at least 90% of the time, I'm using a soothing, calming voice, late night FM DJ.
The FM DJ voice?
To calm you down, slow you down. And maybe 10%, 5%, I might have an upbeat voice, selectively. Flip those for business. 90% of the time, I need to be upbeat. 10% of the time, I may need to say something like, we can't do that, instead of no. So 10%, for me to lay something out that I need you to think about in a serious way, which should be a minority of the time, a small minority, that's when I flip the voices.
That makes sense. So you're switching between this logical brain where they have to calculate something and crunch numbers or do something in their head and keeping their emotions engaged enough where they're happy to be there with you and they feel like it's a cooperative engagement.
Yeah, and you have more mental ability and a positive frame of mind. I mean, the mindset of flow, which is where optimum human performance is highly positive.
Okay, so what about when somebody asks you for something impossible, right? This is one of the top takeaways from Never Split the Difference, the how am I supposed to do that type situation. But what happens when somebody asks you for something impossible? Business, we can come up with an example easily, but I'm thinking in hostage situations, you hear this ridiculous stuff in movies all the time where they're like, yeah, we need a helicopter and a private jet and, you need to drive the van around you're not going to help these guys get into a helicopter landing on the roof of Chase Manhattan Bank. It's not going to happen. But you can't say, you're delusional, man. There's no chance of that happening. You have to do something when faced with an unreasonable request. How do you handle that?
How am I supposed to do that?
And then,
I mean, that's the opening move.
what if they just say, land the helicopter on the roof of the damn building?
And I'm going to say, but if I do that, how am I going to let the hostages go?
Okay, so it's always make them think, make them think, make them think.
Right, right.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy how it works. I finally got it flipped on me once. I'm in a, we're doing a simulated terrorist prison takeover. We're doing some training, interestingly enough. We were in Jamaica. And I'm playing a bad guy, and I'm the most experienced negotiator
That must
there.
be fun.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Plus, I figure, you know, I'm better than either. My opinion, I'm better than any of the negotiators on the other side.
Okay.
And I'm saying, you know, I'm holding these people. You got to let my colleagues out of jail. And the negotiator on the other side says, "How do you want us to let them go?" And then up until that moment, the thought in my head that I hadn't thought it all the way through, because it wouldn't be enough just to let them out of jail.
Sure. Let them run around Kingstown?
Yeah, well, they'd go a half mile and they'd wait for them and they'd pick them up again. It's not just how do I get them out of jail, how do I make sure they get away? I hadn't thought it all the way through. And it never even occurred to me till they asked me that question in a simulation, and I remember saying to myself, I didn't think this all the way through.
So even you, who kind of maybe developed a lot of this tactic, it works.
Yeah, a good question makes you slow thinking, Danny Kahneman thinking, in-depth thinking. You become aware that you haven't thought it all the way through. You immediately see it falling apart 2 steps further than you've thought, and that completely stops you in your tracks. Completely, which is the point of the question. Stop the other side in their tracks.
So you pause. I know that the formula of this is like pause, apologize, mirror/apply as a question. So can you break down that formula a little bit? The pause is clear. And then you literally say, sorry, Jordan, but how am I supposed to do that? Is that kind of how this is applied?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that simple?
It is as stupid as it sounds, absolutely.
So your girlfriend and kid must use this on you all the time now.
You know, it's a great way of letting somebody know also. It's another way of saying, you just asked the impossible of me. You know, it forces a good, how am I supposed to do that question, forces the person being asked to take a hard look at exactly what they're asking the other person to do. Now, they might not change their mind. That's not the point. The point is to get them to stop and think.
Okay, because I'm thinking people right now are going, wait a minute, they're just going to tell me exactly how they expect me to do that. But that's okay.
Well, 2 things. First of all, everybody imagines that.
Yeah, that's how it simulates in my head, right?
That's how everybody simulates in your head. Now, slightly out of 9 out of 10 times, it doesn't work out that way. And so we get a lot of people, wow, well, one time it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Realize there that your success percentages, you'd be happy with those percentages if you went to Vegas. You had a gambling system, if all you got to do is it works more than 51% of the time or more, and pretty soon they're renaming the casino after you, right?
Sure, yeah.
So, again...
or you're banned from the casino, which is more likely. Yeah.
But every now and then somebody on the other side says, because you have to if you want the deal. Mm-hmm. That's actually a great answer, because everybody's job as a negotiator is to find out how far we can push the other side without driving them away from the table.
Right.
And when somebody says, if you want the deal, you'll do it, you now know that's as far as we go.
What happens when people get angry? This is probably happening far less in business situations, but I would imagine hostage negotiators, or people who are, I should say, hostage takers, they get pissed off. They're like, look, man, I'm the one with the gun. I'm the one with the civilians. Stop jerking me around. I'm tired of answering your stupid questions. I'm hungry. I'm tired. It's hot in here. Quit asking me stupid stuff.
And here's what should completely bake your brain. Hostage negotiations are calmer than business negotiations.
Okay, how is that even possible?
I haven't run into a single business negotiator that doesn't have at least 5 stories of somebody on the other side screaming at them, slamming the door, calling them names, refusing to calling them names on a phone. Constantly. Everybody's got those stories.
Jeez.
Hostage negotiators have one or two.
Okay. Why is that the case?
Well, again, because as soon as the other side feels listened to, why get mad? And a hostage negotiator starts listening right away. Business negotiation, we sit down, I go like, I ain't interested in what you had to say.
Right.
You're going to listen to me.
Right. I hold all the cards. I got to win. My boss needs to see me as the smart guy in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't do that as hostage. We calm people down real fast.
How do you do that?
First, it's voice. I mean,
FMDJ voice? Okay.
FMDJ voice actually, what does that really mean? Before I finish the sentence, if you can see me or if you could hear me, and if we're on the phone, you could hear me, my tone of voice has gone in and hit something in your brain called mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons have triggered an actual chemical reaction in your brain. Chemicals are being dumped into your brain and into your system that slow you down before I've even finished the sentence. That's how that happens.
And that works even with like psychopath, sociopath type folks that don't maybe...
Everybody's got mirror neurons.
Everybody's got mirror neurons? Okay. I'm not sure on that. You're probably right. I haven't...
The psychopaths, the sociopaths, that's a result of principally of conditioning. Nobody's contending that there are functional, physical things missing from their brains. They're talking about something happened in their development. Interestingly enough, there was a syndrome. The reason why people hold babies in hospitals and in orphanages now, because if children aren't held enough in the first year of their life, that's when they learn how to bond. And if you haven't been held enough in the first year, and many children in orphanages or abandoned or in hospitals for extended periods of time are not picked up and held, they haven't learned how to bond.
Mm-hmm. So they end up with developmental stuff.
They have issues in the rest of their life bonding with people. And so that something is absent that happened after they were born.
Okay. I vaguely remember reading about this. It's just been a while. Some of these books all blur together after a while, especially with all the junk science out there.
So you just need to read one book.
Yeah, just one. Just Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I'm imagining, let me guess, that's the book you recommend.
Oh, interesting that you should mention
Yeah,
that.
that's my idea. I came up with that. You identify and label emotions when people are feeling them to calm them down. I read that. I thought that was a brilliant tactic. How does this work in practice? I'm screaming at you, stop asking me stupid freaking questions, send in a pizza, and $2 million, I'm going to start whacking some of these dumb kids I got here, stuck in this bank. What are you doing to calm me down at this point? Yes, you're listening, but what else? I mean, I'm just pissed off. It's been 13 hours. I got nothing left in the tank. I'm over it.
I'm gonna say, sounds like you're mad at this whole situation. Sounds like you want to get out of there.
And what does that do, the labeling? What does that do to my lizard brain?
The simplicity of it will obscure how effective it is. What I'm actually trying to do, if I say something to you, it sounds like, when that hits your brain, you actually ask yourself, is that the way it sounds? It triggers a thought in your brain.
Like a logical or a rational thought.
It triggers an identification, a labeling of it, if you will. It causes you to contemplate it sort of as an issue, to decide what you're thinking. They did it. The book is The Upward Spiral. I wish I could remember the author's name. They did an actual experiment. They induced negative emotions in people by showing them pictures. Picture made them scared, made them sad, made them lonely, whatever it is. They're monitoring the neural activity. I show you a picture that makes you angry. And a specific part of the brain lights up. It's a portion of the amygdala where the negative emotions are housed. And that lights up, the electrical activity is going crazy, crazy, crazy. I show you the picture and I just say, what are you feeling? And looking at it, if you're feeling afraid, you say, I was feeling afraid. And the part of the brain that was lighting up now stops lighting up.
So labeling the emotion blunts it or gets rid of it.
A triggering of contemplating the emotion, not denying it, not suppressing it, not pushing it, not trying to get rid of it anyway, just a triggering of an awareness of a negative. And every time they did that, that portion of the brain that was lighting up stopped lighting up. Not some of the time, every time. So if I say, it sounds like you're just tired of being here, that causes you to think about it, and the part of you that was frustrated, tired, annoyed, you don't mean for it to happen, but that part of the brain stops lighting up.
What if it's a positive emotion? Do I not want to label it then?
That's a stupid thing, because positives then reinforce positives.
So I want to label negative emotions to blunt them and label positive emotions to reinforce.
It's like the north and south pole of a magnet, has the opposite effect. Complete, exact same device, complete opposite effect.
Huh. Why is that?
That, I haven't, well, first of all, I don't know why it caused the negative part of the amygdala to shut off. I just know it did, and there's so much of the brain, they got no idea why it works, they just know it's there. A little bit like gravity. We really have no idea how gravity works. Nobody's jumping off, you ain't gonna go jump off the Empire State Building because gravity's still gonna be there,
I don't
right?
need to double check it, I'm confident.
I don't think it works today.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, therefore I'm not gonna hit the ground.
Right.
So it's still there. And the emotional reactions in our brain are very much like them. Do we completely understand them? But their effects are unmistakable. From practice, the effects of labeling positives are unmistakable. If you say I want a car and $1 million, a car means you want to escape, you want to live. I'll say, sounds like you want to get out of this.
Okay, so
and that'll reinforce your positive desire to live.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily even, it sounds like you're reading between the lines. You're not saying, oh, okay, let's talk about the car, let's talk about the money. You're actually reading their intention instead of what they're actually saying.
The more you read between the lines, the more powerful the effect is.
Huh. Because you're telling them why. Actually, let me repeat that. Why is that the case?
Well, it's triggering the recognition inside. And again, this is a gravity issue. I just know it works. And we see it on a regular basis, and we see it actually kind of in really funny ways. Here's a great one with customer service people. Because they're battered children, right? You call customer service.
As in everybody treats them
like crap. They're getting screamed at all day, every day. We wonder why they're in a bad mood. They're getting screamed at all day, every day. I know, you'd be in a bad mood too. I'm on the phone with this woman, and I'm not doing a great job, and she's like giving me short answers. She's barely staying on the phone. Her tone is really clipped. And while she's got me on hold, I'm trying to fix an airline ticket with no fees.
Sure.
I can just imagine her turning to her colleagues and saying, this guy's lucky I'm on the phone with him at all. All right, so let's go into bizarro world, tactical empathy is what's the other side's view, not what's your view or what's true.
Tactical empathy is what now?
Tactical empathy is what we use in the book. Daniel Goleman would call it cognitive empathy. We call it tactical because since we know how the brain works, we might as well use it in a tactical fashion. So if she's saying that I'm lucky that she's talking to me at all, in her view of the world, she's being generous.
Oh, I see.
So she gets back on the phone with me, and the first thing out of my mouth is, I appreciate how generous you've been with me so far. And I can feel her mood instantly change, and her tone instantly change. And she says, give me another moment to look into this.
Yeah, turns out I can solve your problem pretty easily. I just didn't want to before.
She didn't want to before.
Yeah, of course. Why should I help this guy?
Because this guy's being a jerk.
Right, like everybody else.
But I in between the lines, I know there's a positive emotion in there that if I can punch it, if I can hit that target and dial it up, it's a pretty good chance she's going to change her mind. And that's exactly what happened. She says, let me check. Something else I got to check. She puts me on hold. She comes back on. All fees are waived. They got the ticket changed.
So we reinforce people's, current opinion of themselves, or we just try to read their mind in the moment and then tell them what we think they're feeling?
Yeah, it's all kind of going to be implied. It's current opinion of themselves, depending upon what you want to reinforce. What are they telling themselves in a moment? If they're acting stingy, then their view is if you're lucky to have any of their time, they're actually being generous. Sometimes with a little practice, you can hear around this stuff pretty fast. And that's really all it takes. It's just practice.
Huh. Okay. I like that example a lot, actually. So this dovetails nicely with what you call the Black Swan rule, which is don't treat other people the way you want to be treated. Treat them the way they need to be treated.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you flesh that out, or is that kind of what we just talked about, or is there more to it?
No, it's really more that, the assumption that everybody assumes they're normal, when in fact, at best, you're maybe normal with a third of the people out there. So you get into this thing called, well, I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated. If I'm an assertive, I want answers. So give me answers. And I think I'm treating you the way I want to be treated. I like people to be direct with me. I'm going to be direct with you. Well, that's probably not true. You may not want to be spoken to that directly, that bluntly. If I'm doing a golden rule, I like to be asked. I love clarity. I crave clarity. I once had a colleague say that. I crave clarity. Eric Barker writes a fantastic blog and book of the same name, Barking Up the Wrong Tree. He says clarity is violence. Trying to get clear. Let's get clear about this. It often is perceived as a very violent exchange, verbal exchange. So, you got to be real careful about assuming that how you're wired is how somebody else is wired, because you're going to put something on them that they just might not resonate with.
So we try to read what they need and give them what they need instead of assuming that they need the same things as us.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of principal factors do you look for? You look for the communication style, whether they're assertive, cooperative. What was the other one?
Fight, flight, make friends.
Fight, flight, or make friends. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, really, to some degree, everybody's going to want to be heard out, which is, everybody wants to be heard. That's why I show up in a negotiation. I want you to hear me. So if I start hearing you out, plus it's going to give me a good read on which of the types you are. Have you thought through every detail? Do you pride yourself on the details? Have you done a lot of research on me because you pride yourself on relationships? Are you really firm in what you want because you pride yourself on getting what you want? Those are basically the three types. So I'm going to let you start talking, and I'm going to start to get a real clear feel for where you are. Plus, also, when I see maybe some holes, if I adapt to how you are, you're going to let me show them to you. Where does this not add up?
Well, the book is loaded with very detailed negotiation examples from both hostage situations and business situations. There's a lot more than we could get to here. And I think it's probably got to be one of the most widely regarded books on negotiation, even if you do say so yourself. Right? So thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Jordan. Thanks for having me in.